erosion control is like insurance. The thief who's going to come rob your house is that storm. And you don't know when he's going to hit. You don't know how big he's going to hit. And you don't know how hard he's going to hit you. So the question becomes is what kind of insurance do you want to buy? Now, if you have nothing to insure, like when I was in university, there might have been a case of beer or something else, but somebody broke into my house, I wouldn't even notice they would have taken something. And so I never had insurance then. And that's if you're away from a water body, what are you protecting? Are you protecting something that's really valuable to society, to the environment, to your community? And so the cost of what you want to spend on erosion control should be proportionate to what you are trying to protect. And what is that loss going to be if it does happen, if that thief, that storm comes and does that?
Hey there, welcome to the Stormwater World podcast. Shout out to our parent company, Digital Stormwater. We're out there making an impact in stormwater one click at a time. We put more stormwater people in front of your stormwater products and services. How we get there is totally up to you. Some of the services that we offer are social media management, Google, LinkedIn, and Meta ads, SEO and content creation, website builds and updates, AI automations, consulting, and a lot more. So the question is who do you know that needs our help? If you're on YouTube, you can click on that QR code to learn more, or you can give us a call at 844-451-2534, or you can visit us at digitalstormwater.com and schedule a call with us today. I'd like to thank everybody that's been listening to this podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you. Let's get back to the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of the Stormwater World podcast. With me today is Mr. Mark Myrowich with ECBVerdyol, who I just saw, or I kind of saw at a recent conference. My wife got to talk to him, and now you're here. Mark, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for spending a little time with us today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So everybody knows we got to do the bio before we get into the meat and potatoes. So let's get that done. So Mark has built his business on innovation inspired by biomimicry and contractor common sense, which, oh man, now you're just talking crazy. The first in the world to make a 16-foot wide erosion control blanket, the creator of the hydraulic biotic soil amendment category, and the creator of the rifle staple gun, which I know is not in our notes, but I would like to circle back to that. Since, I do live in Texas. Come on. We got to talk about it. We got to talk about a rifle staple gun. It's not that exciting. All right.
You don't want to open carry with it, no.
Mark has only started his journey of innovation in the erosion and sediment control industry. Mark started in 1995 as an erosion control contractor by starting Mid-Canada Hydro Seeding in 1995. And in 2001, he started ECBVerdyol, which is a leading Verdyol. I told you I'd mess it up. Which is a leading manufacturer. You messed me up when you told me what it was backwards. I'm going to be honest with you.
I'll tell you
now I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's totally my fault. Which is a leading manufacturer of erosion and sediment control material, which he sells across North America. So welcome again. How are you today?
Excellent. Well, it's great day to be on this side of the grass. So very happy to be here.
Oh, all right. So we've got a few things to get through that you want to talk about. So let's just dive in, because I'm very interested, because on this podcast, we're either talking about dirt or water or a little bit of both, right? Almost every episode. And you've got something called Ditch 2.0. So you just want to, I don't want to steal your thunder. You want to go into Ditch 2.0?
Yeah. So Ditch 2.0, my mother said, hey, son, go to university so you don't end up working in the bottom of a ditch. And lo and behold, I'm in an industry where we're in the bottom of the ditch. And I say, how ironic life is that way. So, but if I'm going to be working in the bottom of the ditch, let's get it up a level. Let's not just make it a conveyance of water away from the structure, but what else can we do? How can we innovate? What things can we make that we can design in there? And I think about it like computing. Okay. So regular computing is just ones and zeros and at the speed of light. And that's how we're thinking about erosion control right now is just, hey, what do we do? What's the reaction? Where I want to get this into quantum erosion control. When we're doing more
Oh
than
man,
just
hey,
what?
you're skipping straight over AI erosion control. You're just gonna go right to quantum.
So,
Okay, let's
well,
do
if you
it.
think about quantum
Let's go.
computing, is when many things are happening at the same time. We think, we get from here to you, I got to go this way down the road. That's linear thinking instead of really expanding our minds and thinking outside the box. When we're in the bottle, you can't read the label. Let's get outside of the bottle. Let's look at what can we do. And so that's where Ditch 2.0 comes is we, as society, we just want to take that water and convey it away from the structure because a lot of water beside a structure is typically not a good thing. But we forget what we can do around that structure to get multiple benefits, not just one benefit, but multiple. So if you rethink the ditch and you think about the soil, let's just start with that. So if you want to get the water away, you get it away as efficiently as possible. You put it in a trapezoidal channel and you move it away. Well, what if we could hold some of it behind? What would the benefits of that be? Well, downstream flooding, for example, it would reduce. If we could hold an inch of water in soil and have that much less go down to the receiving body or go to the flood plain or the flood area, we can actually hold water in a very micro environment. Instead of a pond or a ditch, can we hold it in the soil? Okay, great. So now if we just worked on building soils in that channel and getting the living organisms that are in there, let's talk about water in the soil first, just getting the air in there, just loosening it up so that water would penetrate into that clay. If you got sands, it's going to go in pretty quick, but if you got that clay structure there, you're holding water. Holding water is going to provide life. So now when we have that yellow pieces of equipment going over and digging that ditch, moving that soil, compacting it, we're really not making great soil, or some people would call it dirt. So what could we do in that seeding process to add life in that soil? And what kind of life do we want in there? And what's the benefit of that going to be? So now we can hold water in our structures. We can hold life in our structures. And that life, when it terms, nitrifying bacteria or mycorrhizal fungi that are living in there, they now have another purpose of being able to help the nutrient cycling, to help that vegetation. Now we get the nutrient cycling going because, we think we're farmers, and I've been called a ditch farmer, but in reality, we're not like farmers. We don't plant and harvest, plant and harvest. We don't
Right.
do that. What we do is we plant and then we want it to grow and stay healthy and strong as long as we can. So if we're in a very poor soil condition and we get this vegetation and it doesn't have the mechanisms in there to get the nutrients for the plants long term, you're going to have a weaker and weaker structure where really we need to have stronger vegetation to help protect that structure that we're building, if it's a pond or a road or whatever. So, right now we're just thinking erosion control. Let's just stop the water from taking away the dirt that could wreck the structure. But I want to go one step further and do the quantum erosion where now we're building soils, we're holding water, we're starting to store carbon. And so I looked at how do we store carbon in our soils? And it comes down to necromass. And what necromass is the dead bacteria. The dead bacteria that's living there. So we need to create the bacteria. What kind of bacteria do we want in our soils? Nitrifying bacteria. And if we can get the nitrifying bacteria, they're going to provide the NPK, for that vegetation long term. And nitrogen is a top growth. And so now we're thinking, now this is not just a conveyance of water away, but now we're thinking quantumly and we're thinking, what else can we use this structure for? And then you look at the next step would be, what kind of vegetation do we want there? So often I see in our industry that we just pick some kind of vegetation that's going to grow. It's typically a grass, some kind of legume. Hopefully there is a legume. They're important in terms of the nitrifying bacteria. So the whole 2.0 idea was, what else can we use a structure? What else can we use our infrastructure for? Governments are saying that we need to store carbon. We're burning too much fuel. We're getting too much CO2 into the atmosphere. We need to deal with it. And how are we going to deal with it? Well, let's burn less fuel. It's difficult to do because that's an energy source that we need as a society. If the government has so much land that we're building roadways are, and it could be argued that every mile of road, there's 5 acres of ditch. How much carbon can we store in that ditch? And how much should we be storing? And what's the cost of storing that carbon in that ditch? And should we be doing that? Should that actually be a function or part of the spec or part of the requirements of building infrastructure? Because before the road was there was storage of carbon. And now there's not, or not as much. Should we be focusing on that? And the cost per acre to do that that's what I mean by quantum erosion, by ditch 2.0, maybe it's ditch 3.0, and that's exciting. It's exciting to me. I know I'm geeking out on a ditch, but my mom said, "Hey, don't work at the bottom of the ditch," and here I am.
I mean, if you're gonna be in the bottom of the ditch, you might as well make it better, right?
Damn
You
right.
might as well make it your ditch. So from a visual standpoint, or just trying to wrap my mind around, Ditch 2.0, do you have any kind of visuals or case studies somewhere we could link in the show notes for people? Like, is there something on the website that we could kind of show what this looks like? And
Yeah,
kind of like what you're.
absolutely. So one of the categories that I knew we needed, and I started this in 1999, really kind of came together in about 2007, was creating a vehicle to get life back into the soil. And that was the biotic soil amendment category. And I started off as a hydroseeder doing it, where we were in northern Manitoba. There was an airport. It was all sand. They wanted me to hydroseed. I went, how are we going to grow stuff on this sand? We took a little bit of the moss material that was there and available, and we spread it around the airport, and there was sticks and rocks. And then the airport guy came along and said, you got to move those sticks and rocks because they're going to get trapped up in the airplanes. And it was a pain. It was a pain in the butt to take that material and put it there. Then I started looking around, and in northern Canada, it's kind of like the tropics. You don't get a large amount of topsoil. What you see is a very thin layer of organics, and then the glacial till underneath. So 12,000 years ago, when that glacier scraped across North America and receded to the north, it left sand, gravel, rocks. It rolled them around, and in the north, there was no way for us to haul topsoil there. To haul topsoil, we'd have to have a truck run 8 hours with a thing to get the topsoil on, and that was just impractical. It just wasn't going to happen. But when I started to look at what Mother Nature did, and I said, well, geez, she's got this forest in the north of Canada. She has this whole ecosystem. How did she do it? And so I started to study the mosses and that thin little layer of organics and said, what's in there? What's happening? And can I copy it? And then that's when I realized, okay, it doesn't need 4 inches of topsoil. What you need is a reservoir of water for the plants to grow. So you need to get water down deep so the roots can get the water, because in drought, it'll dry up on top, but it'll hold down deeper. So you need to get that column, but you only need that thin little layer of organics on top. So then I looked at the mosses and I said, okay, what can I develop a product with, and how can I apply it? And we came to the realization that the easiest and the best machine to do that, where we would have the most control of application, would be a hydroseeding machine. So I had to get the product to be able to pump through a hydroseeder and spray over the surface. And when we got that done and we put that together, we then realized that we had a product where we could deliver that life through that mechanism to get those microbes, that mycorrhizal fungi, that nitrifying bacteria into the soil and make that happen. And then
So
people say, well, Mother Nature would do that. And she would, but she takes 50 years to 100 years to make it happen.
right. Well, and you bring up Mother Nature, and I think you've kind of alluded to it. But before we move on to what we have in our notes about biomimicry, I'd like to I want to step back and just, ask the tough questions, which I don't normally ask very many tough questions on this podcast,
Do it.
but
I love
I
tough
think
questions. Makes us better.
but I think the questions that the people will probably have in listening to, Ditch 1.0 to 2.0 is the same question they always have, right? Because we
Okay.
always do what we've always done. And you talk to the people, and it's the thing I hate the most. I've hated it my whole adult life is when you walk into an environment and you ask a question and the answer is what? Oh, it's because we've always done it that way. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not an answer. Like you can't. Okay, then I'm not sold. Then we're probably changing this process, right? That's how I look at that. And I think you would agree. But the question would be, well, cost, right? Like, do I have to wrap my mind around the big picture because it is so much of a higher cost and on the front end to do some of these things? Is it relative is to how it has been done and it's just a mental shift on, hey, this is a better way, just get out of your copy and paste mentality and look at this holistically, and it's not an extraordinary higher cost? Or do I have to go, because when I got my lead AP, they would sell it like, oh yeah, it's the contractor, it's gonna cost them X percentage more to build this building, but long term, if you do all these things right. And then, of course, the back end, which I doubt, I don't think there would be much, because I mean, you're kind of with the vegetation, you're kind of going back to where it was. But maintenance is always the four-letter word in our industry. So how do you address those questions? Cost versus the old way, and is there any additional maintenance that people are going to have to live up to or deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple questions there. First question is about cost. So,
Yeah,
you're going to have to move material to have some kind of growing medium on that roadway that, if you're digging a pond out or whatever the case may be. And
right.
first cost is save what you have. If you're pulling soil away, keep the life in that soil going. Make sure it's vegetated right away, because your mycorrhiza will start dying, within months of that stockpile. And then when you have a dead topsoil, and you bring that back, you have a weaker system. You have a weaker life in there. And so I'm always a proponent of staging and doing all of the things that are going to reduce the amount of erosion that's going to happen. I say in erosion control is like insurance. The thief who's going to come rob your house is that storm, and you don't know when he's going to hit. You don't know how big he's going to hit, and you don't know how hard he's going to hit you. So the question becomes is, what kind of insurance do you want to buy? Now, if you have nothing to insure, like when I was in university, there might have been a case of beer or something else, but somebody broke into my house, I wouldn't even
Right.
notice they would have taken something. And so I never had insurance then. And that's a trip. If you're away from a water body, what are you protecting? Are you protecting
Right.
something that's really valuable to society, to the environment, to your community? And so the cost of what you want to spend on erosion control should be proportionate to what you are trying to protect. And what is that loss going to be if it does happen, if that thief, that storm comes and does that? And so what I'm seeing in terms of a lot of erosion where things are, hey, let's just mulch something. And mulch does work. It stops that raindrop from hitting that impact in that soil. And I look at, and there's temporary mulching, and then there's permanent mulching. There's temporary seeding and permanent seeding that's out there. And so those are different costs at different times, depending on, again, what you're trying to protect. With the biotic component to it, you want that in there for long term, and you want that in there when you know your soils aren't going to be healthy or new or have all of the things to it that need it, to grow for long term. And um, but if you're going to be bringing in topsoil, and it seems like people want to bring in 2 to 4 inches of topsoil, if you're doing that, the truck hauling and all of that, if you need, depending on your haul distance, is going to be much more expensive than just adding in the bacteria and the mycorrhizal fungi into the things. And we utilize the mosses as the carrier of that. So how do we get that in there? Why do we put that in? Why did we design it the way we did? Our product smells. People like open up a bag of it and go, oh, and they're smelling the ammonia. And the ammonia is the nitrogen that's being created inside the bag. We make it moist for a purpose, that we want that bacteria to multiply. And then we want to deliver that bacteria to the site, and then we want it to multiply even further. But if we just deliver the bacteria to the site, let's say just with like a inert wood or on its own, it doesn't have that chance to multiply and to get going fast. And what the value is of getting it going fast is you're going to get vegetation growing fast. You're going to get, that notice of termination from your job. You're going to get that vegetation growing right away. And there's a lot of cost to it. So depending on where your job is, I was talking with Alex the other day, Zimmerman, and he was saying, up north where we have to fly into a job, if we're done the job and we got to go back, and then to get the NOI, we have to go back 3 weeks later to see if the grass grew. There's a cost of going back to seeing the site. There's a cost of waiting. There's a cost to the general contractor who's got a bond being held, money from him to get the next job done, being held until the grass grows. So there's definitely a cost to that. And another great statement that Alex told me once that I really love, he says, if you are a government employee, that your constituents or your population wants you to build this infrastructure for them, and you don't have healthy, strong contractors, you're not delivering what your job is to get that road built or that pond built or that community built, because you are not going to do it. You need healthy, strong contractors to do that. So getting vegetation done quick, getting it done while you stage the project going along. So when they're ready to demob and get out, you can sign off because it's completely vegetated. And so often we see jobs being held, and the vegetation is the pain point of everybody on the site. It's like, oh, how do we get this done? How do we do that? So yes, there's a cost to doing this, but there's a cost to not doing it, or taking another technology where you're just throwing over a straw blanket over top of it, over top of poor soil, or just a wood fiber mulch over top. And I make a straw blanket as well, and many different types of blankets. And sometimes it takes a long time for vegetation to grow. And that's because of the foundation. So
Gotcha.
I know we went a little bit further than Ditch 2.0, but there's a lot of poor
Oh
soils
no.
out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting. I mean, I find everything interesting. But just to step back for a second, Alec, do I know Alex Zimmerman? Does he work with you?
He
Should I know him?
does. Yeah, he does work part-time with me. He's on my technical committee and whatnot, but he also has Creative Courses, which is a educational. He's a well-known teacher in our industry, and he's
Okay.
typically at
Okay.
different events, IEC events, and he's up in
Okay.
Vancouver, Washington.
All right. Well, shout out Alex Zimmerman. Cool.
Yeah,
We'll have to track him down, get him
yeah,
on the
one of the
pod.
smartest guys. Definitely one of the smartest guys in this industry.
Gotcha. Like I said, we'll have to search him out. So thank you for that. Did you want to touch on, like, I guess after the fact, then there's really the maintenance is normal. Then it's kind of a moot. It's a standard maintenance after, there is not that issue. That is an issue with what we're dealing with here. It's a standard.
Well, there's two types of maintenance, and let's talk about this from let's say you got some federal funding for your construction job, and you
Yeah.
do a poor job with the vegetation, and there's lots of
Right.
erosion, and you got to bring soil back, and you got to patch it up, but you signed off on the job and you pass it over to the local maintenance department. Now that repair has to come out of that budget, not out of the possible federal dollars you had to build it. So you're moving your cost or your maintenance cost locally, which typically isn't a big budget of just getting it done right the first time. And so a lot of that too is, hey, we can get vegetation growing right away. It's easy to get vegetation to grow anywhere fast, quick. It only has 5 things it needs to have, and none of them are soil. It's food, air, light, a temperature range, and air. I think I said that already. I can't remember. But it doesn't, we can grow things hydroponically. Remember in grade 3, you stick that bean between that paper, you wet the paper, you stick it up on the window, then the bean miraculously grew.
What? Grade 3. My wife does that to this day. She's got we've got some apple trees she started from seeds with like, wet paper towel in the window. Are you kidding?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how does it
I
do
know,
that?
I know firsthand,
How
within the
does
last
mother
year what you're talking about.
how does Mother Nature do that? What is her strategy? And can
Yeah.
we mimic her strategy? And
Yep.
how that happens is the endosperm in the seed itself is initial food source, initial fertilizer of a plant. And so the seed is designed in such a way that it will grow without soil. It just needs some light and it needs some water passing through it to stimulate it and to get it going. But that seed on that window never goes to grow beans or anything like that because grade 3 is over, summer holidays, and the beans in the garbage, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at again, this is the biomimicry side of things, is understanding
Right.
where does the food come from. And and when I looked at what nature does, where does nitrogen come from in the air? It comes from the bacteria. What we're breathing right now is 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and carbon dioxide. The challenge is the nitrogen that we have right now, it's held together with 3 molecular bonds, the strongest bonds in nature. It's very difficult to break that apart. The way nature does it is through lightning storms. That power, that energy in our storm events, when those things happen, you ever notice how grass greens up faster after a rain event, a good booming thunderstorm? Well, that's because
Right.
nature's just released a bunch of nitrogen to the earth. And the other aspect is bacteria. So I can't create thunderstorms and lightning, but I can create places for the nitrifying bacteria to be able to store that nitrogen, because when we leave that construction site 2 years later, 3 years later, we're counting 100% on Mother Nature to feed that grass and to feed that. So we plant seeds in Oregon and the prairies and other places. We bring them all together. We bring them on the construction site. And I said, well, why can't we just grow the bacteria and the mycorrhizal fungi and bring that as well? And Mother Nature would do that through birds and wind and everything else, but she takes 50 to 100 years, which is nothing for her, but a lifetime for us. And so all we're doing is just going one step further from taking just seed, and we're taking the plant. Now we take fertilizers. We take man-made fertilizers or chicken manure, turkey manure, that type of stuff, and we bring that to the site as well. But that's only a lunch. That's not a way to that's giving a man a fish, not teaching a man to fish kind of scenario.
Right.
We're just given a fish, but the fish will last out by bringing those mycorrhizal and bacteria to the thing. We're teaching the soil to fish to get that nitrogen to fix that, get that going. Anyway, I can geek out for days about the technology of how and why it works, but I don't want to lose your um, audience because I get too much into it too fast, too quick. So
I don't know. I don't mind it. I think we spend a lot of time, it feels like, on Stormwater 101. So sometimes I think it's good to get down into the weeds a little bit and understand, the science that's gone behind what you're accomplishing, which is, I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about is around the biotic soil amendments.
mhm.
Am I correct in that? Yeah. And
Yeah,
looking at the other stuff, I'm kind of, as I look away, I'm not ignoring you. I'm looking at your website as we're talking.
no
Um,
problem.
so I can also point people to resources that they can follow up on, um, once listening to the episode. But you have on here that you also wanted to talk about hemp. I think we've got time for that. You want to mention a little bit about hemp and its evolution, I guess, and the
Yeah,
origin.
it's one of those materials that everybody's always interested in it. Everybody always wants to talk about it, and there's been a lot of talk for many years. Where it came to me was one day in 1998. I think I was a contractor putting in coconut blanket right beside an industrial hemp field in Manitoba, and I said to the crew, we were kind of having a coffee on the tailgate type of thing, and I said, "Hey, take this blanket and smell it, and pretend you're on a island in the South Pacific drinking a margarita." And it dawned on me at that point that we don't grow coconuts in Canada, and we import this material from far away. And here's an industrial hemp field right beside me, and that fiber, ships built and rope built out of it, and tough fiber, and all this stuff to it. And I thought, well, maybe I could replace coconut fiber with hemp fiber. And so that was kind of the genesis of the idea of getting into the blanket business.
I
And
got you.
at that point, being a contractor, there was only 8 foot wide blankets that were being made. And I said, well, why don't we make it 16 foot wide? Because that'd be less time putting it down, less overlap, less cost, all of those types of things. So then I bought the first 16-foot wide blanket machine and got into making hemp. And then that machine caught on fire twice. And third time it came around, I was just like, oh my God, this is a lot. So I went and parked it for a while. And recently I've discovered some things about hemp and how to put hemp together in such a way that we can create a netless, a plasticless, a
Right.
stapleless, no staples, no net, no plastic, 100% natural product that will stick to the ground and adhere to it like nothing else that I've ever seen.
Oh,
And I think that's going to have a market of places where people just don't want to put plastics into the ground. They want to make it simpler to use. They want to make it way more environmentally friendly. And and it's a product that we make right here in North America and grow right here in North America. And I think that is a next evolution of innovation. I said in the beginning that innovation is
do you already offer it? Is it already available?
no,
That new product?
it's brand new. It's still in the final stages. By the time
Okay,
this airs, I hope I have it out, but it's not out yet.
I got you. So
So you're hearing it. You're hearing it first on this podcast.
Oh, we got it. Hey, we like that. We like that. You heard it here first. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on the website for that. Cool. Cool, cool. Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
I know it's not the rifle that I think it is, as being the dum dum that I am, and the fact that I just I saw a rifle staple gun and I was like, oh, I gotta see that. I gotta know what that is. But I'm looking at it on the website. It is very cool. It is not what I thought it was, but it is what it's supposed to be. So I encourage everybody to go in, and I would assume, and you created this, like nobody thought to do this, Mark. Everybody,
No,
they're just on
no,
their hands and knees.
I'm
Remember?
not. I'm not the first. I'm not the first one to create a
Oh,
staple
okay,
gun. There was many before me, so I don't take credit on that. But I've definitely been out there the longest with a staple gun, and there's a couple key things with it that makes it work. We also get it, we also sell a lot of it outside the erosion control industry. There was a movie
oh
set in New York that wanted it to pin down fake snow for a movie set. We've
yeah,
sold it to strawberry farmers, and there's many places that we sell that gun. But it's really just a tool for the contractors that, I would say after you get into your 30s, you don't want to be on your hands and knees all day putting in staples. So you get the
exactly.
you get the tool.
Yeah, exactly. So for the listeners, they can't see the website, and, don't want to go and check it out, and don't know what it was. Like I didn't. It's basically it's a commercial staple gun that's got a that you can stand up and put down. So
Yeah.
just like they've got the stand up nail guns that you use for decking, this is the same idea, except for it's for heavy
And it's,
duty for staples.
and it's used for landscaping too. If you want to put fabric down, or you want to pin
Yeah,
down
yeah.
your geotextiles down, it's been used for that as well. It's the riflestaplegun.com is the website. And we got a YouTube channel that goes through all the ways of using the gun and the
Cool.
maintenance of it and those kind of things. So it's
Hey, so
quite fun.
you've got something in our notes that others have not, that I find interesting. You want to talk about your Facebook group?
Yeah,
So
yeah, there's
everybody can go join that. Like I'm going to do it right now. Like,
yeah. So if you go to Facebook groups and you type in hydro seeding / erosion control professionals, we have about 4,000 people that are in that group. And there's a lot of great discussions between and projects that are being shown. And it's hydro seeding weighted, but it's really a forum for people to post, ask questions, show different techniques. And if you're on Facebook, it's a good little group of 4,000 people out there, and a lot of contractors are on that. And I'd love to have more specifiers and engineers, and really have a good open discussion on a platform like Facebook to talk about our industry. So
cool. Yeah. I'm going to go check it out, and then we'll link it in the show notes as well, so
awesome,
people can
appreciate that.
find it. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, so how about, I know you've got to go. So final thoughts. I know you've got to run. We can't keep you here and keep talking super science on the evolution of our ditches into what they could be instead of what they currently are. Do you have any other final thoughts for the listeners before we wrap it up?
If you are a young person in this industry and you're thinking, how can I make a difference? And there's everything has been invented and everything has been done. The good news is there's not. What we're looking at right now today will be old technology into the future. And if you think more than just lineal, but you think more quantum, many things at one time, you're going to add a tremendous amount of value to your employer, to your community, and to your environment. And I think today we need that as a society. As we go forward, we need these engineers and specifiers and technicians and biologists and whatnot, rethinking not just our ditch, but our whole industry.
Well said, sir. Mark, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
All right, everybody. That's the pod.